Hello, everyone. Happy Independence Day to all of you. Thank you so much for turning up on a national holiday in India. I'm Saurabhishwar Sen, founder of Catalyst, welcoming all of you to the session today. At Catalyst, since 2011, we have been training students from schools, colleges, universities, and also working professionals for careers in the social development sector. More than 500 aspirants from Catalyst over these years have secured admissions into Bachelors and Masters courses in social sciences at institutions in India and abroad. More than 350 of them are now working in professional capacities as social workers, entrepreneurs, policy researchers, analysts, media and culture researchers, human resource managers, capacity building trainers with governments, private organizations, civil society, multilaterals, as well as think tanks. Coming back to the Independence Day of 2020, we have, by all possible means, realized like never before the importance of Swatantrata or Shadhinata. The syllable Sha or Swa that resonates with an independent self requires us to refine our skills to effectively augment our thoughts for social interventions. On that note, I am very happy to introduce to all of you the speaker for the evening today in India, because the speaker is joining us from Philadelphia, and it is nice and shiny morning there that we can see. Dr. Shourjya Deb has extensive experience with the social development sector in India, USA, and Africa. He has mitigated social problems concerning clean drinking water, supply, establishment of public toilets, participatory budgeting in slums, community organization, development, rehabilitating children, econometric modeling on education, along with delivering teaching and training modules on planning markets, community development, quantitative methods, data management, weather and well-being. Dr. Deb has a PhD and master's degree in public affairs from Rutgers University, New Jersey. He pursued master's in social work from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai, and a bachelor's in arts with comparative literature at Jadavpur University, Kolkata. He's working as a researcher for Sahel and West Africa program of the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, also known as SIPRI. The bigger delight is Shourjya was also part of Catalyst in 2013, and the culmination to this day is truly motivating for all of us to understand through his eyes, through his perspectives, through his realities about the skills required to thrive in the development sector. So without further delay, I would request Shourjya to take on the session. I would thank him for taking out time, adjusting to the time differences. I would thank every participant in the session to take out your time on a national holiday in India to turn up and be a part of this interaction. What I would request as a basic flow of our thoughts, which we follow in all our sessions, is do not hesitate to share your views, perspectives, and questions, at least in the chat box. Sometimes though, using the mic can cause some network error, but the chat box possibly gives us the advantage to really culminate our thoughts together as Shourjya builds up on his thoughts and views. I will personally also be helping Shourjya in sieving out those questions, and we can share those questions from our end with him so that this session is steered in an effective manner. Shourjya, thanks a lot for turning up. Happy Independence Day to you too. Over to you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. That was a better introduction than I could have given myself. Thank you so much for having me here. It's indeed a full circle coming back here after Yes, 2015. Yeah, 5 years. Yeah. So thank you so much. Let me quickly outline some of the things that I'm going to talk about. First and foremost, I have the chat box open, and with Sir, I'll try to kind of negotiate that. If you guys have any questions, I'm not going to keep my speaking time really long at this end. I'll try to wrap up in 10 to 15 minutes max so that you have time to ask questions, which is more important. Um, uh, that is what I thought was important when I was applying abroad. So that's an overall perception. So just to add to what Sir said, so I am currently working in Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. It's a uh, it's a it's a disarmament. It's a think tank that works on disarmament and on peace building. It's one of the places that I wanted to get through to at some point of time. But to be honest, I'm still not there where I wanted to be. More or less since 2012, I've been chasing this UN. What do you call it? I don't know. I mean, like this UN posting, which I never really got, but it also gave me a good idea as to uh, how to get there and what is required to get there. It also gave me a good idea about how we are not necessarily skilled enough to get those jobs. So, starting off, let me talk about certain qualifications that I have and which might be useful to you, might not, but there are things to put in perspective. So, as Sir said, I did my undergrads from Jadavpur University, Comparative Literature. But what Sir probably doesn't know, or I think, or probably I've never mentioned, but because before that I was actually a computer science engineer for around 2 years, and I dropped out. So I think Sir does. Yeah, I think yeah. So I dropped out and I joined comparative literature. That's an important aspect of my educational career. It's incomplete but important, and I'll tell you why. Uh, Secondly, I went on to TIS from there onwards. While studying in Jadavpur University, I was heavily involved in socio-political issues, movements within the campus and outside the campus. And my move to TIS was a very ideological one. This is something that I wanted to do. This is something I thought that I could work at and work with without getting bored. So this is something that I chose. Uh, this was an extremely steep learning curve for me. Jadavpur University was very relaxed. Comparative literature gave you perspectives, but I think it is a very relaxed environment in JU. This means deadlines. You stick to those deadlines, you get your job done, and you also bring perspectives with you. So that was a pretty steep learning curve at that point of time. And from there onwards, pretty much while I was doing my master's, I got interested in research, and specifically quantitative research. So TIS has a mandatory, I think at least back in 2013, 2015, it did have a mandatory dissertation project that we all had to do. Some of us took on qualitative research, some of us did quantitative work. I did quantitative work, and that's when I realized that I don't know too much about quantitative research methods. Uh, I wouldn't blame TIS here as an institution. You have to keep in mind that TIS deals with around 30 to 35 people in a classroom. So for example, in TIS, I was in the specialty children and family welfare. We had around 30 to 35 people in that class. I would say it is impossible to educate people who might not be from a maths background in quantitative methods uh, by doing if you have like 35 people in a class and you're doing like a 1 hour session every week, that's pretty difficult in my opinion. But this did the best it could, and I think it gave me a platform and also gave me a direction. So again, my movement towards my PhD and my second master's was not motivated specifically by that this is something I want to do, this is what I want to become, but more because this is something that I wanted to learn. Again, it was very ideologically motivated. I thought if you wanted to learn quantitative research and learn it well and actually understand statistical modeling and not just be a good consumer but be a good producer of statistical modeling, then I would have to move out of India. The reason behind that is, even while I was in India, I tried to look up places like Indian Institute of Science. IIPS was right next door to TIS. But if you have an arts degree, there is no way you can make it into IIPS. You need a BSc or an MSc. So I literally had no other way to learn or get a certification. Like, uh, knowing something is different, but having a degree to show for it is also important to a certain level, especially when it comes to recruitment. So that is when I decided that I will have to move out. And I think an education abroad, whether be it in US or be it in Europe, gives you that multidisciplinary flexibility where you can dabble into stuff that you've not learned about. And that's where I mostly moved more into the data science and quantitative methods approach. And that's what I specialized in for the next 5 years. 5 years were important. I learned a lot. Theoretically, I think this had me covered. So there was not a lot of new theoretical things that I was learning during my stint at Rutgers, but a lot of practical stuff. So, for example, data management, statistics, mapping. These are things which I learned here. Designing research, which is something we always talk in terms of jargon back at home, but it has very real, palpable, you know, effects. So that is something that I focused on, specifically research design and research methods. But by the time I was in third year, I started looking for jobs, and I realized that getting jobs is again a different game altogether. I think what I learned in the last 2 years was that you have to have the necessary skills to market, and that is where I talk about demands of the market. So as a social science researcher or as a social science grad, when you step out in the market, you have to understand that there are two different ways that you approach the market, or that's what I think. This is just my opinion. So there are two different ways I think you can approach the market. One is in the levels of very niche knowledge, and the other is in terms of data. So data is what I did, and this is where my 2 years of computer science engineering helped, because I'm not really scared of maths and I'm not really scared of coding, which at times is a drawback for a lot of people who are from a pure social science, someone who's probably taken up uh, arts in 11 and 12 and then gone on with a sociology degree or a psychology degree and gone on. So the level of maths that you are exposed to is less. It's not that you're good or not good at maths. It's just that the exposure that you've had is comparatively less. So that makes you less comfortable with it. Since I meddled around with some coding and some engineering maths when I was there in engineering college for 2 years, I wasn't as scared about it. And the same applies to my wife as well. So my wife is also doing her PhD. She's in social work in Boston College. She does biostatistics and epidemiology, and she is also a chemistry undergrad from St. Stephen's. So both of us are science people who went into social sciences. So keep that in perspective when I talk about what are the different ways you approach the market. So one would be the data science method, where you pitch yourself as someone who understands social issues and how to look for them and approach them in terms of data. Data is a very interesting thing. Everyone throws this word around. But data science is very different for business analytics. It's very different for the social development sector. The data structures that we use are different from the business sector. The way we approach them, the econometric modeling that is required is very different. There are a lot of things, and that's a whole game altogether. The second one that at times gets overlooked by the continuous exposure to data is the niche area of influence. So for example, let me put it this way. Say BRAC is a pretty big NGO that works in South Asia now, centered around work in Bangladesh. So if I were a master's student from TIS or maybe from JNU, and my master's dissertation was with either the Rohingya refugees specifically, or with Rohingya issues, or with refugee issues in general, and if I applied for a job in BRAC, I would actually have a chance at it. Specifically because that kind of mingles with my specific area of expertise. That is the area of expertise. So again, there are two ways you can approach. One is more be the data jockey and go that way, and other is to align yourselves to certain areas or niche areas where there's a lot of investment in, or where there's a lot of talk about in general. So something like climate change or energy issues would be like really hot right now. So I've had friends in this who did I think urban development and stuff like that. So So stuff like that is also like, you can align yourself to an area which is in demand right now, or if you think you are specifically interested in something which is not in demand right now, you'll have to find other avenues. So for me, it was data science. That's what I did for myself. So these are the two ways I would approach the market, or which are the demands of the market right now at this point of time. Going on to some more skill oriented work. Uh, Interestingly, even after graduating from the best social sciences colleges, be it JNU, be it TIS, Azim Premji, I don't know, even Vishwabharati actually is very underrated for social work. Interestingly, Vishwabharati sends a lot of master's grads to TIS. So that's another place that's really underrated. But um, even though when you come out of these places, which are probably the top tier names in social sciences in India, you will find there's a gap in skills, because the organization demands a certain kind of work from you. So for one, if you are doing a master's dissertation in TIS or in JNU or in any of these, so that's a very important piece of skill. If anyone is in TIS right now or planning to go, I would suggest that you take research very seriously, right from the philosophical approach of it, how you position yourself as a researcher, to actually implementing research and actually understand the problems that arise when you're doing surveying, and how you design a question. And those are things that basically SIPRI pays me for. One of the things that SIPRI pays me for. So that's one thing that I would definitely concentrate on as a skill. Secondly, there are a lot of other aspects of working on the social sector. I would say you would concentrate on grant writing, you would concentrate on project management, and you would also concentrate on, if possible, certain amount of data skills, because that's something I do. So yeah, so there are major different types of skills. All these different types of skills have courses on Udemy, they have courses on Coursera, there are multiple learning resources, and I hope Catalyst gets one up. So when you guys have it, you can look it up there. So so skills is not something just random. It's not just something that you talk about in webinars. It is something very concrete. Being able to show that you know how to do research is very important, be it in the form of a dissertation in masters, or even you can attempt publications, which is more academic. That's something that I have not done. My supervisor is still giving me a hard time about it, but that's something that you show, like for example, during my interview with SIPRI, one of the things that they wanted to, so one of the things that they were talking about is like, what kind of data management do you do? How do you do it? How can you be so creative about? How can you be creative about data? So I was pretty sure when I went up to the interview that there were like multiple candidates. I'm absolutely sure all of them were equally good at data management and econometric modeling. So what I basically did was I took data already available at SIPRI, took it down, I messed around with it, and I created some maps with the data that they have. So basically, my idea was to show them that, see, this is what you want, and this is what I can do for you. So being able to exhibit it is important. So if you're talking about terms of, if you're trying to sell yourself in the market as a researcher, you need to be able to show that you are a researcher. You can do research. How do you show that? Either get publications. The impact factor of publications doesn't matter that much, in my opinion, especially if you are trying to get a job in India. And the second is maybe a master's dissertation or a PhD dissertation. So the important part of just is not just about talking that you have these skills in the market or on your CV, but being able to actually show that you have those skills. Next, salary structures. So this is a little dicey because salary structures in the development sector after a master's, it can be all over the place. At least in my opinion, I've had some juniors of mine graduating from TIS who've got like something like, one of my juniors actually graduated with something like a 15 lakh per annum, which was big, and it was in a CSR though. It was not in a development sector jobs. Also have to keep in mind that most students who go to TIS, most, not all, most are ideologically motivated. So we try to get organizations to TIS which cater to our needs. So for example, if there's someone who's from Kerala and he wants to go back and work at some sort of a plantation, we would have to try to work towards finding him or her a job there. So I was the placement coordinator for my batch for a year, and then I just gave up, partly because it was like really tough. People all over the world, and I mean people from all over the country, and they have different understandings of what kind of a job they want. Everyone does not want to go to a CSR. CSR jobs pay much more, but there are limitations to the kind of work that you can do. Similarly, if you decide that I'm going to go work at a ground level NGO, yes, the work might be more rewarding personally, but then again, there might be issues about the kind of remuneration that you get. However, there's a way around it too, and I'll talk about that. So coming to roles and designations that one generally works in, that can be varied, right? It depends on what kind of skill sets if you pick up. I mean, like, if you want to be someone who's a researcher, then you definitely go in as a researcher. You could be project management, or you could be like, someone who's like very niche. So for example, someone who's from psychology and has some research or interest in criminal psychology or criminology, so they would go a different way. So as far as roles and designations are concerned, I think in the social science sector it's pretty fluid. That's not something that I wouldn't be too worried about if I was grad. Overall, just to give you an overview of how the market is in current situation, I think I can't speak too much about the Indian market. I have some idea, definitely, but I never competed in the Indian market. I always competed globally. And in the global market, I think there are two important things. One, that I already mentioned, that you have certain kind of skills and you're able to show it. And second, also, where are you from? I mean, it kind of sounds weird, but see, I applied to a lot of jobs when I was in TASE to international NGOs, and I still do. Like places like International Rescue Committee, Danish Refugee Council, and I went ahead and applied to all those places, and I still do. But imagine that there are graduates from Cornell and Stanford and European universities who are also competing for the same job with you. And some of them might be a little more skilled. Some of them might, some of them might they just have those pedigree of colleges which is difficult to compete against. So I have the same issues when I apply for jobs. Even with a PhD, I'm applying as a Rutgers alumni, but there's someone from Harvard applying. So those things will always be there in the market. It's important to find a niche for yourself, either from the data science point of view, which is I think more generic. A niche in the sense is like, maybe you're an expert on energy, maybe you're an expert on criminology, maybe you're an expert with Rohingya refugees. So finding that niche for yourself is extremely important. Even if you don't know data science, you can get away with that niche if it's in the market. Globally, I think the job sector right now at this point of time is a little, well, it's because of the pandemic in general, but I think it's a little on the downside. But it's going to get better once we finally have a solution to the pandemic. But as of now, it's a little down. But overall recruitment in most development sector organizations have been up before the pandemic came through. I think people had no issues getting jobs. Most people could. However, if you are competing globally, there's one more skill that you have to add at a certain point of time, which is language. If you are trying to get a job in Northern Africa, it's probably best that you know one of those languages which are prevalent there, or maybe French. If you are trying to work for a development sector organization which has German funding, so it would probably help if you know German. So I per se did not know any languages. I am fluent in English and Bengali. That's it. I didn't bother to learn anything else. I have to learn French now. I'm on the job. It's not very pleasant, but I have to do it. So if you get this done beforehand, depending on which area you want to work in, that might be helpful. It's often helpful. So these are the generic statements that I had. I would love it if you guys go ahead with questions, or is Sir going to look at the questions?
Shourjya can go ahead with the questions. Namrata is asking, how does one establish a niche at the beginning of the career?
Okay. So I don't think you will be able to do that in the undergrads. That's a difficult thing to do. Our undergrad education is not steered like that. I think that's an advantage most Western competitors have over us immediately, because but then that's not something you can change at this point of time. What I would suggest, though, that when you are moving on from undergrads to masters, you make a point, you make it a point to kind of find some area which you are interested in. Say, for example, you are interested in children in conflict, right? uh, you might not find a course in India which specifically deals with children in conflict, but you will find children and family welfare in TIS, which is close enough. And once you get there, you can steer your research towards children in conflict. So that's a specialization. So developing that niche is partly exploring options, and partly moving towards things that interest you. In my case, I was interested in children and family, so I moved towards children and family welfare. But also be open to the idea that once you approach your niche, you might not find it that interesting. I don't say that I'm not interested in children's issues anymore. It's just that I find data science more fascinating. So I kind of moved again. So that's an iterative process. I don't think, especially most of us graduate by like 21, 22. I didn't, but like most of us undergrads at 21 and 22, you've not seen enough to but you have an idea as to where you might go. So I would say try to steer your education their way, get those kind of degrees, uh, read up a lot on them. I mean, Google Scholar is still free, it still has a lot of articles, so you need to be updated on those. I think that's how you create a niche, not just the degree but also the information that you have, the general information that you have on those areas. Okay, so this is Indrakshi. Counseling session usually from India and later go on to abroad. Then we might face problems in adjusting and catching up with the fast pace. Okay. So it was just at the right time to go. If you're gonna, PG, what will be the drawback for us, as we did from UG from also have having a PG degree from the benefit. Okay, yeah, really good questions, Indrakshi. So yeah, let me get this. Okay, so first thing, you are not going to have a problem catching up with postgraduate education abroad, be it in Europe or be it in US. I can absolutely assure that. I was like politically active throughout my days, throughout my Jadavpur University days. I did not study as much as many of the other scholars I did. I managed fine here. Yes, you have to be a little smart in how you approach education. Um, um, uh, Let me put it this way. I remember taking my class 11 physics exam. I got a 10 out of 70, okay, and that was bad because I was pretty good at physics in class 10. Uh, and it's not that I didn't work hard. It's just that I did not try to understand. Let me put it this way: being able to understand concepts and apply them practically is more important in the West than it is in the East. So I had some training in it because Jadavpur University dislikes you learning answers and writing them from semesters. You don't score that way. So I had some training in Jadavpur University that way, kind of independent thinking. The education was steered towards that. So I didn't have a problem when I came to the West. That is the only problem I can pragmatically point at, that you might have transitioning from UG to, from a Indian education to a Western one. Other than that, when it comes to putting in time, putting in hours, the grind, I think Indian students we are good to go. We shouldn't be worried about. Okay, so so it was suggested. Okay, my question is, if you go for PG degree abroad, will you be able to drop one? No, so that's no. Also, is having a PG degree from abroad more beneficial than a PG degree from India? Okay, yes, it is. Getting a postgraduate from abroad is, I would still say, is better than in India, but you have to consider a couple of things here, and that is important. That's also something that I had in mind, and I do not mean to speak disparagingly about anyone else, but this is important to note in terms of pragmatic life. How much are you willing to spend on a PG degree abroad? That is important. See, I went for a PhD and not a master's because I know PhDs are funded. It is also difficult to get into a PhD, but a PhD is funded. A master's degree is not funded. I have had batchmates from Tata Institute of Social Sciences who have come to US later. They have done a degree from Harvard in public policy, a master's in public policy. Some of them went to LSE, London School of Economics, and they did a master's there. And let me assure you, most of them paid for it. Okay, it's good if they can. There was a joke in TASE. Okay, we used to do this. That there would be like 5-6 people in TASE every year who got through London School of Economics. And the fun thing that we used to do was like ask them, did you get funding? Because that actually means whether you got through or not. Because if you did not get funding, that means your dad's paying for it. Okay, nothing wrong in it. Absolutely nothing wrong in it. But it's possibly not easy for middle class Calcutta and West Bengal people to pay for. We are not a business class. We are mostly service class people. We can't pay for that. So a PhD is a better option, which is why you will see a lot of Xavier's, Jadavpur, Presidency, Vishwabharati abroad doing PhDs and not masters. However, the problem here is that doing the PhD is 5 years of time, which could be better spent in the job market. You would have a higher salary or pretty much the same salary. The PhD doesn't give you necessarily edge in the job market in terms of salary initially. It does not. Like a master's grad is going to get it's pretty much get the same salary that I would do. But what it does is when the company decides to fire, it's not going to fire you. It's going to fire the master's grad. So keep that in mind. However, the PhD takes a longer period of time. That's a decision that you have to make. The master's it takes a smaller period of time, but it's often you end up paying for it. The exception to that is like people who went to Erasmus. So a lot of Jadavpur University people and Presidency people who go to Erasmus. I am not sure if Erasmus is still paying for master's courses, but at one point of time it did. And that was great. So if you can get funding for masters abroad, go ahead, do it. If you want to take a loan, that is something I'll strongly discourage. Because keep in mind that loans are generally taken by engineers and MBA people who get a 3-year OPT. So let me explain what that is a little bit. In short, I don't want to get into visa issues, but a little would help make sense why I'm saying this. So once you complete your degree, master's degree, say you do it in public policy in the US, and someone who's a friend of yours does it in data science or like a computer science engineer. So you both get 1 year of work permit after you finish your course. Okay, so you work for 1 year. But what happens is in the STEM subjects, they give you a 2-year extension. So basically, a computer science engineer can work 3 years in the US without any visa issues after they finish their degree. Whereas the social science grad gets only 1 year. So it makes it difficult for you to be hired. Companies would rather hire an American graduate who they don't have to pay for visa and sponsor the visa and stuff like that. So that's something that you need to keep in mind. You are at a disadvantage in the American market, or even the European market for that matter. So if you take up a loan, you just have like a 1 year to make sure that you have a job and or make sure that you pay for that loan. I think that's a very tough ask. I would kind of advise against it. So that's that. So but if you don't have financial issues, I think if you can support yourself or you've made some money before and you have some savings that you can pay yourself from, that would work. Also keep in mind, if you do a master's abroad, there are a lot of small jobs you can do, and I was kind of open to it. I mean, I would work at a Starbucks so that would kind of cover some part of the money that you need to spend here. So you could do that too. So given if I am asked to make a choice, PG degree from abroad in a good university, yes, definitely, I would say that. But keeping in mind that there are financial issues involved, I would definitely look into places like JNU, TASE, Azim Premji. That's a good place. Ashoka is not bad too, though Ashoka is expensive, but it's not bad too. And those are pretty much value for money. I think these places are also upskilling in the kind of skills that they're teaching their students. So you should be fine. That's my take on that. Okay. Tanya says, how did you manage to get into Rutgers? How did you manage funds academically and skills? Good question. How did I get into Rutgers? Well, I took the GRE. I did, well, during this, my final semester, I stopped partying and I got my shit together and I started. It helped because I kind of like maths, which is odd, really odd for someone uh, who has my profile. But yes, so I started studying in the fourth semester of this, uh, uh, supported by very ably supported by my then roommate. He was like really cool, and my then girlfriend, who's my wife now. So I that's when I started studying. I took my GRE, I think somewhere within sometime in between the third and the fourth semester. So, oh no, in the second year. So in the third semester, I started studying in the third semester. So I took my GRE between third and fourth semester, and somehow I like uh, bunked college for 1 week straight, studied for TOEFL, and gave TOEFL on a weekend or something of that sort. So that's how I applied. That's the first part. Uh, how did I get into Rutgers? I think application to a US university is based on a multiple things. It's not one ticket to convert, especially in social sciences. You have to show that you know some degree of research. You have to show that you are good at your GRE, whatever skills that GRE tests. There's a lot of debate on whether GRE is really useful or not, but whatever skills that GRE tests. Thirdly, for TOEFL, your grades in undergrads and masters, they kind of matter. Uh, I was very selective about it, but I think I did top my uh, department till the third semester, and then I got selected at Rutgers and I lost interest. So I didn't really study for fourth semester. So I eventually came second, but the grades matter. They really matter, your master's grades. The better the university, the more important they become, and your recommendations. So these are like the major importance. So my recommendation was, I think, my comparative literature department HOD, Dr. Kunal Chattopadhyay. He wrote my recommendation, one of them, and the other two were written by professors from TIS. You have to make sure that these professors are closely linked with you, because even I read recommendations and I kind of make out this is generic. So one of my recommenders was my fieldwork supervisor, Dr. Mohan Igudkar, and the other one was my research supervisor, Dr. Trupti Panchal. So all of them are very closely linked to me and would put in the time and effort to write a decent recommendation. Also, a small pro tip about recommendation: don't try to get someone who's going to just write good things about you. No one takes those recommendations seriously. They expect the professor to know you as an individual, and that is what matters more. So those were the application requirements for getting into Rutgers. How did you manage funds? Didn't have to. I was sponsored from day one. So I came to US on August 2015 last week, and my salary was debited September 2nd week. So I was on job from September 1st as a graduate assistant, and I completed my job for the graduate assistantship. I think it was on as August, May, June, July. Yeah, June last week was my final. This year, June last week was my final day on the graduate assistantship job. So I didn't have to worry too much about that. I got the stipend is not like, you're not going to live a lavish lifestyle, but Rutgers is among the public schools. Rutgers was pretty generous with their funding, and this was good enough for me to rent an apartment for myself. I had 2-3 people living together, and I could go back to India once a year. It was okay. I had no issues. Academically and skills. Okay. Skills, I partly think I was lucky, but back then when I applied, I think I had a tendency to go towards quant work. I did not know quant work very well, but that tendency was important. Academically, I was very lucid about my research ideas. So my research idea, which is again a very important aspect of when you're applying for a PhD, what your research idea is, whether you are clear about what you are testing. You have to be clear about issues of internal validity, which basically means, are you really testing what you are testing? You have to be clear about issues of external validity. Can this research be replicated in different areas, and make sure that, so these concepts have to be very clear. It's not that difficult to be clear about these concepts. Get a good book and read it, couple of more a few more times, you would be okay. Don't go into jargons. That's what they hate. Jargons, that's something that I picked up in taste. The more jargons a person says, the less that person knows about social sciences. Don't go into jargons. Very, very clear. Be able to define these concepts very clearly. Be able to understand how to apply these concepts very clearly. I think that's important in terms of a research breakthrough. Okay, so academically skills, that covers it. Okay. Srishti says the education system in India is at times more focused on completing all degrees at one go. How relevant do you think it is? Okay, I kind of understand where you're coming from, but it does, yes. If you generally take the normally taken STEM route, which is basically engineering karo and then you do an MBA, then get it done out fast and get out of the year. But I think with social sciences, you have a little more freedom with that. In fact, I was talking to this friend of mine. He's actually got through. He was my batchmate in TIS. Shabaz was my batchmate in TIS, and kind of helped me out when I was networking for jobs. So one of the things that he suggested, and I later think back, and I should have probably done, was taken a year or two off before I apply for my PhD. Right? I recently saw a think tank in Norway, which was kind of promoting a sort of PhD, and I was looking at the PhD topic and I was like, God, that's what I wanted to do my PhD. But well, it can't be, and that's because I didn't spend enough time after my masters looking through the areas as to what I wanted to learn before I go into a PhD. So I wouldn't per se say that getting your degrees together at one go is a good thing. I did do that after my masters, but that's because I already kind of wasted 2 years during my computer science engineering. Well, I don't really think I wasted it. It was a good time. I learned a lot. Not every education is not just about going to classes. Um, so I would say social sciences is a little more forgiving about that. It values experience a little more because you can learn all the theory you want from JNU and from TIS and from Azim Premji Pondicherry University, but until you really go down to the field and do a survey, actually do it, you wouldn't know how to get around those surveying issues. So I think probably it's not the best idea to get all the degrees done at one go. Maybe if you can work a year, that would be a good insight. Most of the JU, so I am from JU and I know a lot of people from Presi, but most of them have really done this, taken time off, worked a year or two, and that gives you insight from the practical field. And also, yeah. But obviously, if you have, I don't know, I mean, if you have some sort of pressure like I did, so I just went ahead and did all the degrees together. But if you don't have it, take some time off, work, learn. Okay. Yeah, thanks, Indrakshi. Thank you for the question. Okay, Zaif, can you tell me the development policy planning career for PG freshers without experience? Development policy planning career. Okay, so I'm assuming that you are looking at public policy planning. So public policy and okay. Well, but from the just from the top of my head, I would look at organizations like JPAL. I would look at organizations which do policy assessment. If you are thinking of a career in development policy and planning, and policy assessment cannot be done without certain degree of either niche experience or data science. I think public policies are heavily data science oriented um, discipline. I am from a public policy department. I was amongst the few who did not have an economics background. I am not saying that you need an economics background to do public policy. That's not what it is. I don't think you need an economics degree to do public policy assessment in general. What you do need is being able to do applied econometrics. That's what I steered my classes in PhD towards. So if you are thinking of a degree of a job in development policy and planning, I would look at either being able to at least understand and work with applied econometrics, one, or if there's a specific area in development policy and planning that you are looking at, maybe you work on irrigation or something, I don't know, maybe that's what your research interest in, and that's what you've studied about, that's what you know a lot about, then I would steer towards that. uh, Try to kind of push yourself in that area. Without experience, well, to be honest, so this is something that is going to suck a little for social science grads. See, um, let me be very upfront with this. Yeah, if you are working in India specifically, well, this applies for outside India to abroad too. If you're working in India in public policy planning or in general other social sciences degrees, do not expect to make a lot of money coming right out of the PG. That is not going to happen. It does happen. Like I just told you, a friend of mine started off with a lot of money, but here's where it pays in social science. Okay, if you stick around long enough, you make a lot of money. I am not of the opinion that social scientists, social workers should not make money. I think that's a very stupid idea. I think we should make money as much as anyone else does. Obviously, while not being exploitative, but we should be able to. And in that case, I think being able to stick around long enough in the market is very important. I'll give you an example. A lot of my test friends, they started off well, they were doing some jobs, and then they pick up skills on the jobs which are also useful in other professions. So a lot of my friends actually transitioned out of social work into those professions because they make more money there and they make it more quickly. And that's nothing wrong. That's a choice that you make, right? So that's nothing wrong. But if you are looking at making money from right from the day you graduate, you have to keep it in mind that we are not necessarily a market-driven job. We are pretty dissociated from market. So keeping that in mind, I would say that if you stick long enough, you will make money, but you have to keep in mind that it's going to be a difficult approach there. And there's something that I kind of gathered by talking to people who work in UNDP and UNICEF, and people I kind of spoken to. It's much easier to get into these organizations at the middle and the upper level than at the lower level, because the competition is intense at the lower level. But what happens is when a lot of people don't get through, they kind of leave the sector and they move towards different sectors, which is fine. So keep that in mind, that if you are looking for careers without experience, you have to be okay with a low pay to begin with. Yeah, kind of, and you have to kind of either develop a niche or be good with data science. I would definitely suggest taking up some courses on Coursera if you want to do public policy assessment. Yeah. Okay. From Shabana. So, okay, so all right. Shabana says, I have voluntarily worked for NGO in education for 15 plus years. I'm from Hyderabad. What kind of opportunities can I look out for in terms of work or education to get work? Okay. If you've worked on education and if you're 15 years plus and you worked in an NGO in education, I would definitely look up Pratham. I don't know. Maybe you've already worked for Pratham. I don't know. But so here's one small thing that might not work. I mean, I don't mean to be negative about it, but that might hamper you at times. Is like, it's voluntary, right? It's not. Keep that in mind. See, so here's a funny thing. I applied for this international rescue committee. I applied for a lot of jobs there. I got rejected from all the jobs, like all of them. I applied to around like 50-60 jobs in IRC. I got rejected by all of them. Suddenly IRC reaches out to me and it's like, we have this voluntary work for you. Do you want to do it? I was like, okay. I had pretty much nothing on the table at that point of time. I was scared. I was like, let me not have, a period of absence or no employment. So like, okay, I'll do that thing. So I kind of applied to that voluntary position, and IRC came back to me saying that, okay, so you have to interview, and there are going to be 2 rounds of interview. I was like, oh God, I am not wearing formals and interviewing for a voluntary position. I did nonetheless, and I did not make it there also. So it's not that voluntary positions are not competitive, but you have to keep it in mind that if you did voluntary work in India, it will not get you a international recruitment, but it will hold value in organizations like Pratham, Tashi used to. No, I don't think Tashi worked in. But yeah, I can just at the top of my head, I can think of Pratham and Milap, these two, which do work on education. So you might have to reach out to them. In terms of what kind of opportunities, I think you might have like ground level activity. I think you might have a role there. They might not necessarily hand you management positions right from the start. You have to keep it in mind that management positions are people who generally specialize in project management. So that's another skill, right? Uh, but it's a good place to start if you are open to uh, like positions which have more interaction with the people that you're working for. More ground level interaction. That's something that I would look forward to. That being said, I have not competed in the Indian market too much for jobs at the ground level. So take my words with a pinch of salt. Okay. All right. Namrata, what is the best way to learn econometrics related data and so using R or Python without any specific approach? Reading one should start off. Okay. So econometrics, yeah, so see, everyone learns this in different ways. Okay. So for example, my wife's college, Boston College, kind of taught them in a more applied econometrics way, where it was like, you do this, you do this. I mean, this is what you get. You run so and so commands and you get so and so results. That's one way of approaching it. My professors were a little old fashioned. They were like, no, you have to do the math. So I had calculus in 11 and 12, 2 years of engineering mathematics. I'm okay with calculus. I mean, I can't probably solve sums from go to beginning to end, but if I have a derivation, I can make out what they're doing in this derivation and I can replicate it, right? So we learn econometrics in very different ways. If you go on a Coursera course or a Udemy course or any other generic courses, they'll not probably get into the details of how you arrive to those conclusions. Okay, you're not going to know the intricate underlying concepts, but you will know the applied stuff. There is a positive to that and there's a negative to that. The positive is that in day-to-day life, you generally don't need those very intricate roles and why you use this model and which model fits it and why you will not use OLS and why you need logit and provide. You don't need all that stuff on a daily basis. So an applied econometrics is okay, to be honest. But if you at any point of time want to do like serious research, no, that's a bad word to use, not serious research, academic research, right? Which I did for my PhD, that requires a lot of understanding of econometrics. Okay, that would be like then you have to really validate, because people are going to question you. Okay, why did you use this model, and why did you use this particular variable log transformed, or why did you square it, or there is underlying logic behind every choice you make, and you have to explain that. And in your PhD, when you're defending your PhD, you have to exactly speak to that. You don't need to do that for a generic. Yeah. In fact, I would say, I think at your work, you need to be more efficient at being able to do these things and be clear about how to do these things, not necessarily the underlying concepts. So it's a choice that you make. See, it was a choice that was made for me basically, because this is how Rutgers taught it. So I had to do the math by hand and I had to learn it. At that point of time, I was very annoyed because I thought, my wife had it easier. I mean, she was just doing the applied stuff. But now at times, I feel that it's been better. Now, the sad part about this is, if you have a BA degree, you probably do not have a way to do this in India. I'm sorry, because that's how it is. If you're trying to learn actual econometrics by doing it by hand, I don't think they will let you in. An MSc program in economics or statistics is not going to let you in with a BA degree. That's just how it is, right? So, but as I said, an applied program is as good. In that case, I don't know if someone's teaching R or Python like on a regular basis, but if they are, you can just pick up a book. Yeah. I have these like bunch of books by O'Reilly who do a lot of Python and R. I still don't use them because I learned Stata. Once I learned Stata, I knew once you learn Stata is basically you need. So here's what I would suggest: you learn one language, uh, get it down to a point where you are confident of being able to do everything with it. And then it's all about just replicating it. So my department was very traditionally economists department. So there are a lot of economists. Economists generally use Stata because econometric modeling is just much better and much easier in Stata. But data science people generally use Python and R. So once I knew what I did need to do on Stata, I just kind of transitioned into Python and R. I'm still learning Python and R. I'm not like the best at it, but I know how to replicate. Okay. Also, that's not the only things you need. You will at some point of time have to learn either GIS or Tableau. These are things that I know I've kind of picked up because they are important to the kind of uh, analysis that I do. You will find your own niche. You don't need to copy me here, right? You whatever your organization needs or whatever your kind of research needs. So going back, any specific approach, if you think you are not going abroad to get a MS or a MS in data science or an MS in applied data science or a PhD, which would give you the time to explore these. So I'm not a PhD in data science. I'm a PhD in public affairs, but I've been hired for my data science skills, right? And my experience in perception research. So those things are two different things. So if you're not doing a PhD program where you have the time to hone these skills, then you either do a master's where abroad, which will give you the scope to learn these things in a more intricate way or get to know the intricate details of it, or maybe you could just stick to the applied stuff, in which case I think you might find courses in India too right now. I am not absolutely sure, but I think you can. And if that doesn't work, you can always go online. And there are like multiple YouTube tutorials and they are quite efficient. Where can we get appropriate case studies for big data analysis or R programming? Yeah, that's a good thing. So since you're in the social science sector, I would just say go to the World Bank, download their data set and play with it. There's a huge World Bank has a huge data repository. You'll find stuff from child child mortality to maternal mortality and like any indicator that you want to play with, GDP, GNP, whatever. So I generally used that during my data management class for Rutgers. That was very useful. What else can you use? I would generally stick with that. And so there's one more thing. So in case you are interested in any particular area of work, say for example you're interested in disarmament or conflict studies or something like that, then I would go look at the think tanks which work on conflict studies, and they generally put their data out at some point in time. They're not gonna. So for example, SIPRI wouldn't put out its current data, which I'm working on, but at some point of time that data is going to come out, right? We're going to publish it for you, so you can go ahead and just download that data and play with it. Yeah, that would be. But I would suggest that you work with some social science data and not necessarily with business data, because if you're learning R programming and if you move towards inferential statistics at some point of time, not just descriptive, but when you move towards inferential statistics, it's better that you work with social science data, because that would give you an understanding of the modeling that you need to do for each kind of variable. Yep.
Any other questions? Any other participants? Okay. Shourjya, thanks. I think this was... Right. Of course. I'll ask you. So I think I'm asking based on certain queries which we receive from a lot of students in general. So I have basically two questions. The first question is obviously the question which is on everyone's mind, that you have partly answered, that the pandemic has possibly paused the movements in the sector, if I can use that terminology, with be it placements, be it say opportunities in horizontal or vertical directions across countries and sectors. But a lot of people are asking that, will this pandemic, even if after we get to to control it and come to terms with it, do you think with your experience that it is going to set in certain permanent changes to the sector?
Amar mana not necessarily. So here's the thing: the development sector, if you want to divide it, like if I was to divide it into three broad categories, one would be field operatives, facilitators who work on the field. Uh, then there is the project management, people who write the grants, people who get the money for the grants, and then there's also again the R side, data science research people. So uh, to be honest, nothing really changes for the data science people and the project management people. They still have to do what they did. You still have to approach UN and EU for funds. Uh, that's what my boss does. Okay. Uh, my colleague and I, who are the two researchers on the team, we mostly do the sampling design, the survey design. We overview the survey from, so again, so another tool that I learned. So this is something that I picked up, Kobo, which is basically, Kobo toolbox is basically you monitor the fieldwork and data collection. So our work has not changed so much. Where it will change is the field operatives. So field operatives can be of two types: people who are going out just to collect data, but generally people who generally go out to collect data, and especially in conflict areas, say West Africa and Sahel in my case. These people are also people who have been working in these communities for some time. Or have exposure to or some kind of link to these communities, because you can't just pick me up and send them. And I with my colleague designed the research, but you can't just pick me up and send me to Mali and expect that you will get quality data, because one, I don't speak French that well. I hardly speak French at all. But also these people don't know me. I don't look like them. I don't talk like them. It's very difficult to get quality data if you are sending in untested. So when it comes to field operatives, I think it might change a little bit. If you are that social worker who goes to the field and actually organizes there, which is something that we did during our days and tastes I think we had to do this like 15-hour every week, something of that sort. So we had to do that. So in that case, it will change. Obviously, you will have to take not just normal precautions, but you might actually find people at least that's the report that I'm getting from Sahel, that people are less open to kind of engaging and being open to organizing at this point of time. So, but that's not something that is going to stay for a long period of time. It might stay till we have a cure, but I think the development sector is a human-centric sector. It is people. I mean, whether you are looking at research teams, or you're looking at the project management teams, or you're looking at fieldwork supervisors or fieldwork facilitators, I think that's not going to change much. It's going to come back once we figure out. I think there will be more precautions health-wise for people who are on the field, but I don't think it's going to. Were you interested in understanding the hiring process of it? Do you think that your question, that is the hiring going to change?
You can also extend into the hiring part.
So this is what I think. As of now, I'm pretty sure DRC, IRC, all these Norwegian refugee councils, they've all frozen hiring for the time being. I'm pretty sure of that, because there were jobs that had applied to like a month or 2 months back, and I got emails recently saying that that we have frozen this position. So I used to get these kind of emails in May and June as well. Jotodin the emails were like, তোমাকে চাকরি দিচ্ছি না, or you are not getting the job, I was okay with it, because at least someone's getting a job. I'm not getting it, but someone's getting it. But the moment the emails were like, we are freezing the position, that's when I got really scared, because like no one's getting a job. So though that will change, and in fact I have a feeling that once the pandemic gets settled down, there will be a lot more openings in the research side and the facilitator side. Not so much on the project management, because the project management people are senior, right? My boss is senior to me, has a PhD, has more publications and stuff. So I don't think there's going to be a lot more openings on that end, and that is something that you gradually transition into. It's not a beginning position, it's not an entry position. Research is our entry position hoy, kintu like even with an MS or an MA, you might be able to sneak into a research position, but generally fresh PhD people who are PhDs who really know a lot about it. So masters with a lot of publications in a specific area. Okay? So in these areas, there will be a uptick, and in the fieldwork supervisors of fieldwork will be uptick, because partly there's going to be a lot of research on pandemic issues. হ্যাঁ ধরো প্যান্ডেমিকের জন্য ক্লাইমেট চেঞ্জের কি মানে how is climate change being affected because of the pandemic, so you start working on that. How has say for example one type of research that I didn't think about is conflict area te how has the perception of security changed after the pandemic, like you know, is there availability of the Mali forces there, do people trust the work that they're doing? There's going to be uptake at some point of time. So as if I was a social science grad at this point of time in India, I would look out for that. Okay, recruitment badbe. India the specifically badbe kina I can't speak to that, but internationally badbe, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So that means like the second question which I wanted to ask, which a lot of people have been asking, is whether public health as a sector is going to gain traction in terms of hiring professionals with specializations in the domain. What is your take on it?
So this is, I'm trying to speak to it in terms of Ami ki already dekhechi teaser and also what the current situation is. So public health in case has two different branches, and how to put it. Yeah. So one would be the social work public health, which my wife was in, and the other one is the public health the entire year. Okay. So public health and mudde, there is epidemiology, there is biostatistics, there is just project management people, there is just more clinical side of people. All that comes in the public health department. Social worker mudde, specifically intervention based people who mostly design interventions, look at intervention, look at impact assessment of intervention, and they also do the work themselves. And also there's a lot of overlap in the social work public health sector and the public health sector in India. The only difference here is perspective. Yes, public health is a department is just public health. They don't work from a they don't work from a social justice framework, but on a bottom top approach. This is not their approach. The social work does work from a social justice approach. So you make a choice there depending on where you are. Also, if you're applying to, I don't know, JNU public health, I'm not sure, but say like for a TISE, if you are applying for public health, so TISE generally people who go to the public health department are from science STEM backgrounds. Doctors go there, dentists go there. It's not that social science grads don't go there, but there are people who have been remotely linked with health or are interested in health. Social work public health is the social justice aspect of it and also the health aspect of it. So this is how you differentiate the candidates. Now coming to the recruitment entities. Recruitment social worker. So we had a central. This started my year actually. Started in 2015. We had a central placement cell (CPC) and we also had the CGPC, which was the social work. Social worker madhe public health people were one of the like highest recruited people. They did very well with the jobs. They had really good students too. So I would give them credit as well. So they were one of the more robustly recruited lot. That is the social worker. Even now in the public health here, they get a lot of money. The public health department in general, they get a lot of money. They make more money than the average social worker does, and they also get hired robustly. Also keep in mind that if you go into that sort of a public health, which is like the public health department, then you go into a lot of assessment issues. Mane ki bolo to dhoro kerom type of assessment, it will not be assessment of interventions, it will be assessment of dhoro some sort of insurance company will come and hire you. Someone who's selling health insurance will come and hire from the public health department. Someone who's selling health insurance will not hire from the social work public health department. Social work public health department, you will be hired by NGOs which implement projects by the WHO, by UN, by some other body, by some other big organization. That is the line of work there. Because our public health departments are era ashe, but you might also get hired by corporates and stuff like that. So depending on what your frame of mind is, so that's one thing. Both of them do very well in placements. So if you are someone who is who has need for or has to pay the bills, which is a part and parcel, you all have to pay the bills. While we change the world, we have to pay the bills. So in that case, public health as a department is a better option, I guess. Social work public health is the more prestigious option. You can reach WHO with social work, public health. You will not reach, or you may reach. I don't know, but public health ওই দুটো branch আছে কিন্তু. That there's a part of it which is uh, corporatized, and there's a part of which all can also lead to the. Both of them get recruited very well. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Any other questions? Any other participants? I guess we have overshot time by 15 minutes, but it doesn't feel like
Almost.
because
ঠিক আছে, কোনো অসুবিধা নেই।
yeah. Right. I think
BA degree.
right.
BA degree in mathematics is possibly a BA degree in mathematics pure is possible being offered by Rutgers College University. Blah, blah, blah. Minor subject studied in economics, data, and literature. And math is also there. This is the scope is limited. It's pretty cool actually. I didn't know of this. Yeah, this is pretty cool. I mean, I would do something like this. As long as they are as focused on history and literature and other humanities subjects, because at the end of the day, social sciences, data sciences is just one of the tools, right? We are what we are because we are social sciences, not because we are good at data science, but that's a tool. Yeah, this is pretty cool. Yeah, if someone needs it, they can use this. Do you want? Oh, okay. So this is privately shared. So can I? Namrata, is it okay if I share it publicly?
Sure.
Okay.
I did my BA in mathematics from the same college, so that's how I.
Cool. More science people transitioning into social sciences, which is good. But sociology grads will hate us for this. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Bolo to me.
So yeah. So there was one question which, with prior permission, because Enakshi had shared this with me privately, and I'm just reading out the question to you, Shourjya. Enakshi says B.Ed, as in B.Ed, B.Ed, is compulsory for teaching job in India nowadays. But if anyone wants to teach abroad, is this degree enough to get a job? Like basically she wants to understand the recognition of B.Ed.
No. So let me put it in perspective. I am no less proud of India as a country or its education system. It does have its benefits. Indian education system have its benefits. It teaches you to take on the grind very well, which is important. You don't get overwhelmed by it. So that's important. But one of the things that it does not have is a lot of recognition outside. One of my friends from TIS, and she's from TIS. TIS Psych is a pretty dope department. You don't mess around with them. They are very good. They're very prestigious. She did her master's there, and then she went to Canada. So she got a PR, and so her entire family is moving. But initially, and I think that's why she's doing a second master's in Canada, her grad degree from TIS is not recognized as a graduate degree. It's just considered as a diploma. So depending on which country you move to, your B.Ed degree will get downvoted. It will have lesser value. Some places might take it as a B.Ed degree. Some places might not take it as a B.Ed degree. They might just take it as a diploma, as Canada does. But if you are, so here's the thing: if you're thinking in terms of teaching, in US at least, and I can't speak to this in Europe. I just happened to get a job in Europe. I don't have a PhD or any degrees from Europe, so I can't speak to you about that. But at least in the US and Canada, a B.Ed degree will not help you teach. Even in the community colleges, which I don't think they're comparable to government colleges in India in general, but even the community colleges generally have PhD professors. Adjuncts are mostly PhDs. It's only in not rare, but there are people with a master's degree who teach that specific course. Maybe a master's in mathematics would be teaching in a community college. But if you're looking in terms of teaching in university, I think you need a master's or a PhD. I mean, that's what I would say. This is within the ambit of my knowledge. I don't know more than this. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shourjya. I think this has been a great revelation of a session in terms of interactions directly by answering participants' questions. So the format that we are trying to create is that after the session, we will be sharing a feedback form with all the participants once more, like, maybe share a mailer to them, because we are quite certain that there are certain questions which eventually crop up with as the session take back transpires. But of course, I mean, Tania has been requesting.
Okay, sure. But is it okay if I don't give my office email? I just don't want my office email with those.
No problem.
So I'll just give my personal email. That's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be absolutely fine.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yep, that's fine.
Tania, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, she is going ahead to TIS, right, Tania?
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
Which department are you going to?
CODP, social work.
Yeah. They were our rival department when I was in TIS. Pretty good department, yeah. It's a pretty solid department. Congratulations.
I can't thank sir enough. Like, he was there at every point of time. There was a time I freaked out once, but he was there and he helped, and he was very helpful and guided me through.
Yes, I can attest to that too. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Great. So as we discussed that we will share a feedback with all of you so that, we can stay in touch with Shourjya, because we want to build onto the session. The session also has happened because Shourjya was the one who actually initiated it. So let me tell you the backstory. He was the one who really wanted to help all of you out. And I guess to start off with, this has been a very promising session. Lot of, I guess, hard facts discussed. And I think that's important, because so many times we hear about success stories in the market. And I guess it's equally important to balance it off with things that can go wrong, that can, that can create a crisis for us. Because I believe, when you rise above those odds, that's when you really sustain yourself really well. So thank you, Shourjya, for truly ramifying your thoughts in a very
I have one more thing to say. I mean, at Kolkata, so especially to people who I mean, I don't mean to like narrow down on people and make you feel good or bad about it, but after jinish which I stress on is, and this is something I saw with my juniors in Jadavpur University, Presidency University, and especially when I went to TIS to compete with people from Stephens and SL. So my wife is from Stephens. Again, TIS also has the Delhi lobby and the non-Delhi lobby. Okay, so this is just fun stuff, nothing serious about it. But one thing that I have specifically noticed about guys and girls, I think the girls are smarter from Calcutta. Specifically speaking to the guys, I can see some of you here. When you go to TIS or when you start applying to other places, a lot of it is because we feel scared. Are we good enough? Harvard apply korbo kina? I did not. I had a score good enough to apply to Princeton. I did not, which is stupidity. But I kind of, underassessed myself. So this is a part of which I think at times is a part of Calcutta culture. We have a tendency to kind of downvote ourselves and pull ourselves down and underassess ourselves. I'm specifically speaking to this issue because this is something that I saw when I went to TIS. Students from Calcutta do wonderfully there. They do like all of them did brilliantly. I do not know one Calcutta student who was academically doing not well in this. Okay, but the problem is we lack in confidence. Because general Jadavpur University, Scottish Church, Presidency, wherever you take, we don't have the confidence to come up and speak. আমরা ভাবি হয়তো ইংরেজিটা খুব ভালো বলতে পারি না, বা we don't have coherence in our thoughts. ওইটা করে if you sit down you will just be harming yourself. Learn to put yourself out there, market yourself. Let me put it in perspective. আমি Jadavpur University union president ছিলাম, so I was among the more louder people in the batch. Huh? People who can put myself out there, people who can talk, people who can campaign. So when I went to TASTE, I was actually somewhere in the middle. Understand? I mean, what I'm trying to say. That you have to be able to market yourself, you have to be able to market your skills, and you cannot shy away from that. This is something that I have seen tragically in Calcutta students. My juniors from Jadavpur University, my bhai was the cultural secretary in presidency. He kind of resigned like some time back. His friends and the entire lot. You have to learn to market yourself. This is something that Amra Bhabi ki bolto will stick to that thing, right? So if you think that English is holding you down, no, then that's not what TIS or any other place is going to judge you on. TIS to definite. TIS definitely does not judge people on English. It judges people on the content and the intellectual rigor that they bring. So keep that in mind. And don't do that thing. I mean, I used to do that myself. I used to think, oh, I have nothing to contribute. There are people from Stephens sitting here, people from SRCC here. They probably topped my class 12 percentage by 12 to 30%, but it's a different ball game, right? So keep that in mind. That's all I had to add. Go ahead.
I think thanks a lot. I'm sure this is valid for people who are also outside Calcutta. And
yes, absolutely. From Hyderabad, from Ranchi, and actually even outside Calcutta, it actually applies to more. So I have had a lot of friends from Guwahati. Okay, very talented chaps. It's partly because I was born in Assam, so I can speak Assamese fluently. So I got along. But that's the thing that we had. It's like when we go to these places. I mean, it's not just that. When I came to Rutgers, I was so freaked out when I was going to New York for the first time. I have no clue why that freaked me out. It's just a city. It's just like Delhi, just a little cleaner, but it's just that. So let's not be intimidated, irrespective of whether you're coming from Guwahati, Calcutta, wherever. You go to these places, you go to these conferences, you go to these higher centers of education. Be confident. You bring something with yourself, which is why you were there in the first place, right? So do not undermine yourself. Like I used to say, আমি বাংলায় বলতাম যে Saint Stephen's দেখলে যাও, ফেরত যাওয়ার কোনো দরকার নেই. They know as much as you do, nothing more, nothing less. Keep that in mind. And this goes to everyone, like from whichever college you are, whichever part of the country you are. Don't get intimidated. Bring your A game. Put yourself out there. At times it will be a failure, which is good. You'll learn from it. Failing is not a bad thing, irrespective of whatever IIM graduates are telling you these days. It's not a bad thing.
Right. I think that's a great take back, that failure is not a bad thing, and you can even you can even communicate that you have failed with a smile, because that's when you really need to pick up, right? So that's the point. Thanks a lot, Shourjya. This was been a great session. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks a lot, participants. Your questions really steered the session. It came close to all of it.
Can I answer later on? Or
if we can take that on quickly, you can answer, no problem.
Okay. So you could get into Princeton, but you didn't. I want to ask you about criterion. Okay. Very high. Swapnil, Kostub, sorry. Both of you right next to each other, so I confused. Kostub, Princeton, very high GRE score. GRE score is not very difficult, okay? I mean, unfortunately, I had a time limitation, so I could only give it once, and I got a 320, which is like just yeah. But if I had a little more time, I mean, if I was not stuck within the semester, and it was like I had like planned my PhD application a little better, maybe 1 year, then hitting 330 is pretty easy. It's pretty easy. Maths in GRE is not tough. It's just being able to adapt to it. So I think I was a little underconfident applying to Princeton because my GRE was not a 330, it was a 320. However, that's the important part of it. The GRE score is not the only part of your application. So I have my senior in the she is in the history department in Princeton. She had a GRE score around 311. Obviously, keep in mind that the history department is not going to spend as much time on your GRE max score as a public policy department would, right? So instead of having, say, something like a 330, you can get away with a 311 in GRE for history department at Princeton. But what that Didi also had, that Didi was from Jadavpur University history. She had an MPhil and she had like solid research here. So when I was applying, my strengths were my grades in TIS, my GRE score to a certain extent, my understanding of research, to a certain extent my recommendations. If you are strong on all 5 of those points, I would say go ahead, apply to an IB. But just one small but, I believe that if you are going to an Ivy League to learn a lot of new things, this is a subject that you don't know a lot about. You have to learn a lot about, you have to ground yourself, in my opinion, and you can talk to other people about this. In my opinion, an Ivy League is not a good place to go there. Because an Ivy League, you will go in and you are running from the first day. You will not get time to learn. You are competing because with you in that batch are like the top minds of that particular field. So you won't get time to learn. You have to be competing from the first day. Right? That's in my point of view is the backlog of going to an IB. Okay. But the good thing about going to an IB is after 5 years, you will be like you. So my job was at SIPRI. So SIPRI ranks around 25 to 30 in the top 50 in most influential think tanks. Someone from Harvard would probably crack top 15. Okay. I didn't crack top 15 think tanks. I cracked the top like 25, 30. So keep that in perspective. However, the sad part is that, you lose out on networks. But if you go to a public Ivy, which is like some Rutgers or maybe that one is a really good school, Wisconsin Madison. These places would be like you will have some more time to learn. They will also be competitive. People around you are also going to be very competitive. You lose out a little bit on networks, I think, but you get time to learn and explore yourself, which for me was important. If you're someone who's got very good ideas about research, you're very well versed with research design, and you know how to get your stuff, then go ahead, go to Princeton. Higher you can go, the better. Okay.
Great. Shourjya, I think we can take this question offline because we have overshot time.
Okay.
Quite a bit. Thank you so much.
Yes,
I think this definitely can continue, and we will create more opportunities with Shourjya in the near future for sure. Thank you so much, participants. Wishing you all the success. Keep your self-belief high. I think that's what Shourjya also meant a lot. That never underassess or never think that certain external criteria will differentiate your belief, right? So that's exactly the take back from the session. Thank you so much, Shourjya, for your time. This is great.
Thank you so much, sir.
We will catch up soon, and
it was great. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. All the best. Good night to everyone. Have a great weekend, Shourjya. Bye bye.
Yeah. Take care.
You too. Bye.